All right, hey guys, happy Friday, December 6th to you. Special day. It's my birthday. Get the day off of work. So, pretty cool. So, I figured I would take this time to share my winter weather forecast. It's going to be different than prior years because, the last, going back to like 2011, I have like this full 2,500 word write up and I break it down and I assign grades per teleconnection. I'm not going to do that this year. And part of it is because I'm a little burned out. Last year was really tough. I really thought that we would have the winter many of us have been looking forward to, and it just didn't happen. A lot of forecasts, including mine, busted. And part of it was because I put it out too early. I normally issue it late September, early October, and certain things just started to change after I put my last forecast out. Had I known and put it out in November, it probably would have been a bit on the warmer side. But even those who were, waving the red flag, the checkered flag, being like, hey, this winter actually could really be much warmer than people thought. Even they, the conservatives were, off on just how warm the winter was. December, very warm month in 2018. This past February, the fourth straight February, where we just had insane positive anomalies. So all that said, though, what are we, the past is the past. Who cares about that? What did the next 3 months hold now that we're officially in December? Well, I'm just going to share some quick hitting thoughts. All right. So I kind of had to whip this together. Lack of time, family of 5 now, never a dull moment. So presentation could be better, but what matters is the content and the truth embedded in it. So pattern drivers. All right. So I got some graphics to show, and some of these graphics are going to come from DT Weather Risk. He's one of my favorite Mets to follow. I don't always agree with him, but this year I feel like he's on par with what I'm thinking. So, all right. So INSO, all I need to know is that's either La Nina, El Nino, or in this case, La Nada. When we have neutral conditions, I'll explain more what that means. For now, just know it's going to play a minimal role this winter. This is not going to be the winter of 2015-16 where we had a super mega El Nino, or the one in 97-98, which really just dominated and overrode the pattern. Just the skinny of INSO, it has to do with the temperature anomalies in the Eastern Pacific. However, it does go back to the Central Pacific and even the Western Pacific, really all components of the Pacific Ocean as far as sea surface temperature anomalies are significant. We'll get to that in a second. And it's the equatorial Pacific, I should say. QBO, MGO, chances are you don't know what those mean, but for now, they're going to be key drivers. And not only this winter, but also any other winter where the INSO is weak. And by weak, I mean that the anomaly in the equatorial Pacific is between negative 0.5 degrees Celsius and 0.5 degrees Celsius. So PDO, secondary driver this year. Sometimes it could be a key driver, but this winter it could very well be a key driver. There is some influence with the EPO and the PNA combo. Again, I'll explain all this means as we proceed through this presentation. And then the Arctic Oscillation NAO. There's a chance some of you have heard this. These are the teleconnections that I feel like local Mets will talk about when there's a cold outbreak coming. So these are always on the board as potential drivers. However, these are hard to pinpoint beyond a couple of weeks. And there's a decent chance we'll see the NAO fluctuate negative, maybe the AO as well, at some point, because as we've seen in the past few months, the jet stream pattern has been very blocky, and usually what you see in October and November can be a precursor to what you see between December and February. So it should be fun to see. Additional pattern drivers, solar activity. We're in another min year. That's good. Solar mins are good for Eastern cold, Siberian snow cover, and also not just Siberian, but Canadian and the Western United States. I mean, we had a lot of Pacific Northwest states have record cold Octobers and Novembers, or Novembers, I should say. So impressive expansion during October. And like the solar activity, this could lead to Eastern cold or above normal activity as it pertains to eastern trophiness, not an official word, but just we want to see an amplified jet stream pattern. We don't want a screaming Pacific jet, which makes the pattern more progressive, and everything is pretty much just blowing light speed from from the west coast onto the east coast, and there's no way to get your Arctic air source in play. You want that polar continental air to intersect with the subtropical jet if you want to get snow down in the southeast. So we need that amplified jet pattern. Soil moisture. This is somewhat new. I haven't really harped on it much, but this is, again, something that DT Weather Risk talks about. Above normal rains in 2019 locally has led to higher soil moisture for Tennessee, most of Tennessee anyway. And this is good since higher soil moisture correlates to cooler conditions, whether below normal temp anomalies and or cooler than forecasted temperatures for a period of months. So say that, right now that the guys that know in CPC are saying that the winter is going to be slightly above normal. Well, if you have high soil moisture content, that could maybe lower the projected temp anomalies down. So instead of a slightly above average, you get something that's closer to average. I'm oversimplifying, I know that, but let's just get to some graphics because it's probably what you want to see right now. All right, let's start with the sea surface temperature anomalies, the equatorial Pacific. This is your ENSO region right in here. You can see the last 6 months worth of activity, and for the most part, we see a lot of warm temps. We see these colder pools erode as we headed into late summer, early fall. It looked like the PDO was going to be sharply positive. That PDO is your body of, I believe it's the Eastern Pacific, around 20, 30 degrees latitude. It's basically look at the Northwest and the how the sea surface temperature anomalies are behaving, say like Oregon, Washington, British Columbia, Alaska. Just look in that region. And you can see that as we get later on in late fall that those anomalies start to cool off along the coast, which is important. I'll get to that in a minute. But as far as the equatorial Pacific, this is your ENSO region. This is your PDO region. Your ENSO region, it looked like there might have been a brewing La Nina at one point, but you could see, you could see that by the cooler waters propagating westward. But they kind of modify and die out as we get into October. So everything is kind of in between that negative ½ degree Celsius and positive ½ degree Celsius. So the ENSO is hence La Nina. More on that in a second. So this just came out by the Climate Prediction Center, and we're not going to go through this entire presentation at all because it would take way too much time, but I just want to comb through it and just show you some of the things that stood out to me upon first glance. Page 5 here, this is a pretty solid page to look at if you're a novice amateur like myself, because you could see the behavior of each of the 4 ENSO regions broken down over here. And you could see, are they above normal? Are they below normal? And you could see that there's something called the Molokai El Nino. I think there's a Molokai La Nina as well. There's a Molokai ENSO when your middle ENSO regions, your central regions, are behaving differently than the far eastern and far western regions. So these correlate, the 4, 3.43, 1, and 2, these correlate over here. You could see how they behave. But it all boils out to something that, or it nets out to La Nina, to neutral conditions. And they'll look at the last 30 days of SST behavior. You could see the areas that are warming rapidly and cooling semi-rapidly. Looks like the Central Pacific from the just north of the equatorial up through just west of the PDO region, a lot of warmth. And that you could see that here as well, just a huge expansion of the Gulf of Alaska. It's your greatest concentration of positive temp anomalies, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I think you get the picture with that. So we'll come back. I suggest going through the whole thing, but all right. So I mentioned the AO and the NAO. This is one of my favorite graphics to show people because it's a comprehensive, full-on view of all the components you need to get um, a negative NAO. And I think, yeah, this is negative. Oh, negative Arctic oscillation. My bad. North Atlantic oscillation is different. If you get a negative AO, that's going to scream cold for pretty much everywhere east of the Rockies. With an NAO, it's more like, I would say, eastern Great Plains and east beyond the Mississippi. So it's like instead of the eastern 2/3, it's more the eastern half. But you can see where you got this high here, this East Pacific Ridge. You saw how with the INSO, with the PDO region, the above average water temps that way. So a lot of times that could lead to or help encourage a East Pacific Ridge. You got to have this block over here. This high is a block. When I say block, I'm talking about these domes of high pressure. North Central Atlantic Ridge. This helps amplify the jet stream, so it has to dive south. These two blocks here, the East Pacific Ridge and the Atlantic Ridge, that forces the trough to go down, move south, has no other choice, essentially. And we reap the benefits. You can see kind of where the cold front sets up. You get more Alberta clippers. They don't really produce a lot of snow, more the ankle biting variety of 1 to 3 inches. And you can get a subtropical jet through this, and we need that emergence oftentimes. We need the moisture supply, so we're just not in a pattern of dry cold like we saw in the winter of 2013-14. But yeah, you can check this out. This is pretty much good for anyone in our regional cul-de-sac to get in on some fun and games. QBO, that's a big thing. I'll come back to that later. The EPO and the PNA. So you heard me talk about the PDO, and that refers to the sea surface temperature anomalies up here, the Gulf of Alaska, Eastern Pacific. And this ties in a little bit to the EPO. What matters, what you need to know as the layman is, like with many teleconnections with positive and negative phase, the hard part, the challenging part is remembering, like, do we want the positive or do we want the negative? Which is advantageous for us? Well, with an EPO, you don't have that hot pool of water, and you don't get that dominess, that ridginess along the west coast. And the difference between the EPO and the PNA is where the core, the axis of that ridge sets up. Is it on the west coast or is it off the coast? That can play a difference, but these are very similar. A positive EPO is at least to a zonal flow. We don't want that because that, if you get a zonal flow, if you hear zonal flow, that means that we are not tapping into the cold continental air up here, in the Yukon territories and across into Siberia, but we're getting like the warm, mild Pacific air off the Pacific Ocean. So we don't want that. We want the negative EPO, which is the flip side, and you can see how this relates to actual air temp anomalies. It's completely different. With a negative EPO, you get the Alaska Ridge and you get increased troughiness. This represents the trough is kind of shallow, but you can get big dips. And I don't think I have the PNA set up, but the PNA is similar, except sorry, let me go back down to the negative EPO, because the negative EPO pertains to a positive PNA a lot of times. If you shift this ridge over just a little bit east, that's more of your PNA, where, again, the axis of this ridge is now over, say, the Pacific Northwest and southward, still west of the Rockies, but yeah, PNA. The NA stands for North America. So just know that when you're looking at a temp graphic, if you could tell, like, you could kind of draw these lines out. You could kind of make them out. You could see for yourself really where those axes are setting up. So yeah, so all that said, EPO, PNA, and the PDO kind of go hand in hand a lot of times, but there are subtle differences and nuances. PDO, here we go. I should have shown this earlier, but so you got warm PDO, below average winter temps, above average winter temps. This is off north. I think this is North Carolina State. You can see this is cool because sea surface temperature anomaly behavior. In a warm phase, you get colder pools here, and then you get this horseshoe of above average sea surface temperatures. We're seeing the exact opposite. That was like the first animation. Remember the animation I showed you earlier on? We find the exact opposite. Something more like this, where we have the horseshoe of below average SSTs emerging, I should say, in recent weeks and months. But the core of the above average SSTs are where you see them here. So kind of more in the Central Pacific. So just know that we're in the cold PDO phase, and if we're going strictly by PDO, that's above average winter temps and below average winter precipitation. My bad. I should have I got that mixed up in my head. So actually, with that said, the cold PDO is not our friend, and a warm PDO would be our friend. So so what we were seeing was more the cold PDO, so I have to consider this. Got the PDO mixed up. See, I do this like every year, and sometimes I still get tripped up. Clearly, we're seeing this, so that doesn't mean that we're going to have a blowtorch winter. It just means that we have one teleconnection that doesn't look like it's going to be our friend, but that's why we look at all the drivers. All right, QBO, this is hard to explain. The best thing, the best way I could describe it is go back to the equatorial Pacific, but instead of at the surface where we're looking at sea surface temperatures, we're going like 20, 30 millibar levels, so very, very, very high in the atmosphere. It's probably just easier I just show this to you, again, off weatherrisk.com. Strong positive QBO values correlate to non-blocking weather patterns in the jet stream. Strong negative QBO patterns or values in the cold season pertain to positive AO and positive NAO patterns. We do not want strong and negative QBO values, but we also don't want strong positive QBO values. We're going to need that neutral to moderately negative to favor blocking patterns in the northern hemisphere. And you could look, NOAA keeps, and the CPC keep values of all this. Basically, if you have negative numbers, you have, going back way high into the atmosphere. You're talking about winds that are going more easterly. So they're moving from east to west. Whereas if they're positive, it's more west to east. And remember what I was saying about we don't want progressive pattern where we're getting all that mild air off the Pacific Ocean. Well, if you have air up high, and it is moving south, there's a southern component to motion of this as well. But if it's easterly and it's going east to west, that will kind of help amplify the pattern a little bit because it starts up high and it works down low, apparently. All right, so one quick thing I want to mention, this is coming off of Tropical Tidbits, but also something that DT Weather Risk showed. There's a potential that we could have a Modokai ENSO of some sort based on the sea surface temperature anomaly behavior here in the ENSO region. And then this is new to me, the Victoria mode special PDO. Those war temp anomalies are pretty far north. So maybe the traditional cold phase of the PDO doesn't apply. And also you don't see the horseshoe as much as I maybe initially thought. So the PDO could kind of be more of a neutral factor for us and not so much disadvantage. Soil moisture, this just backs up what I was saying earlier. West Tennessee, very high soil moisture content. But most Tennessee, we're in the green, so that's good for cooler air prospects. You could see when we're in a neutral ENSO, just if ENSO is the main driver, that does lead to average to slightly below average winter temps. But again, that's with ENSO in a couple months. So final thoughts. We're going to have a colder winter than last winter, but that doesn't take much. Last winter was immensely disappointing. And I think this February is going to be the coldest since 2015, which we had a solid week of ice and snow that month, if you could remember. Cool start in December. That's imminent. That's ongoing. I think December should finish out average -1 to 1 degree above normal, depending on your location from West Tennessee to East Tennessee. I think we'll see a January thaw. I think at some point we're going to see a mild, we're going to see a warm up. We're going to see the pattern relax. We're going to see that Pacific zonal flow Net wise, I think we see a seasonal winter. It's slightly above average when you factor in all the months, December 1 to February 28th, or 29th, because next year's leap year. But we'll have multiple cold shots. I'm blending 17-18 with 14-15 as analogs, recent analogs anyway. Should offer several events for winter enthusiasts like me to track. And you can see the breakdown here, December, January, February. I will update this as we go along, but and just take these with a grain of salt because things could change. But I'm more confident about December and February than I am January, believe it or not. So, all right, hope you enjoyed this episode of the Flash Weather Desktop. Thank you for putting up with me amidst the chaos and the madness. We will get through this winter together, one day at a time. Thanks for watching. Have an awesome weekend. Peace.